Good evening. I'll bring this City Council special meeting, first budget hearing to order. Will please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Ms. Williams.
Mayor McPartlin.
Here.
Vice Mayor Adams.
Here.
Ms. Coy.
Here.
Mr. Gilmore.
Here.
Mr. Hill is not present.
All right. Except first item, item 4, ratification of the collective bargaining agreements, resolution number R-16-25. Mr. Ginsburg, this you or this?
This 4A is a resolution of the City of Sebastian, Indian River County, Florida, duly ratifying an agreement for all full-time and part-time, excluding temporary and seasonal employees, hourly employees between the bargaining unit of the Coastal Florida Public Employees Association, CFPEA, and the City of Sebastian for the period October 1, 2016 through September 30, 2019, authorizing the city manager to notify all parties of the city's ratification and cause said agreement to be put into effect, providing for repeal of resolutions or parts of resolutions in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Kilgore?
Good evening.
Good evening.
We spent a lot of time and effort on these agreements. The first item is on the PEA, the Coastal Florida Public Employees Association. We started probably 8 or 9 months ago with the staff committee, including Mr. Griffin, to go paragraph by paragraph through the prior agreement. We addressed the wording that we thought was necessary to make it clear what the rules were, make sure the employees could could fully understand by reading the document, what their rights were, and to clarify, what kind of benefits are described in there. It is a 3-year agreement. We did provide for a 3% across-the-board pay increase as of the 1st of October. There will be reopeners for wages only the next 2 years, or the following 2 years. One thing we wanted to do is we've got an antiquated step plan that was established years ago where each step is a 3% increment, and we wanted more flexibility. We wanted to create what they would call a range for the job, a minimum and maximum. The bargaining unit did agree to this, so we've got what management thought was good for the city to have some kind of flexibility. If we've got an employee that is taking on additional responsibilities, for instance, then we have some way now to make minor adjustments. It isn't locked into 3%. It might be more, might be less, depending on the degree or the nature of the additional responsibilities. So that gives us more flexibility. All the changes we made were within what we allocated in the budget, with the exception of picking up a bigger share of employee group insurance for dependents. We've had a situation where, because of the cost of the employees' cost of the insurance, it was just not affordable for new employees, and it hurt us on recruiting new employees, because when they saw over $700 a month having to go towards their group insurance coverage, that was a big part of some of their paychecks. So we managed to reduce that to a $450 level for those employees. So we think that's going to help us with recruitment. So we had a vote by the employees, and there was a 25 yes and 6 no vote, so they have adopted it. The city clerk has a signed or executed copy by the bargaining unit representatives. So we would recommend that the city council ratify the agreement and that we get it in place. So that was Resolution 1625.
All right, thank you. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Kilgore?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Kilgore, in going over this, I see that we still have in our contract sick leave that is cashed out when somebody leaves. And if I'm not mistaken, if they were hired before October 1st, 2011, then they can take up to 600 hours of sick leave as a golden parachute or whatever you want to call it when they leave. Is that correct?
What we did, that again was a recruitment issue because, well, not a recruitment issue so much as a disincentive for, when we took it away back in 2011, we said we would not pay them their sick and vacation accruals. In this contract, we negotiated to have some payout, although not the same schedule as before. What is in this current contract is that after 6 years, they would get an increment of up to 50% of a payout of sick leave they haven't used.
Well, and that, you know, that's something that you don't see in the private sector. And I have an issue with that, because I think that as long as it's something that somebody sees as a bankable alternative, if I'm here 6 years, I can walk away with 320 hours at 50%, you know, 50% pay. I mean, if the average pay is $12, $15 an hour, that's a lot of money. And the other thing that I saw in here, and I don't know how this got negotiated in,
600 hours.
but it says, item G, every regular full-time employee entitled to sick leave benefits and who has been employed for 1 year, full fiscal year, and who does not take any sick leave during that fiscal year shall be given 16 hours pay calculated at their base rate to be added to their paycheck with the first full pay period of the following December. You didn't get sick or you didn't use your sick leave, so we're going to pay you 16 hours. That's, you know, a couple $100 for most employees that they're going to get as a bonus for coming to work sick, if they're sick. I mean, it doesn't really, I don't see how that helps the city. I mean, if you knew you're going to get a bonus if you didn't miss a day, and if you knew that you're going to be able to bank these days at the end of 6 years and walk away with a cash settlement, I think it incentivizes employees to come to work sick, and I don't think that's a good thing for the city. That's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And we looked at the other view that when you don't have some incentive for them to not use it, you know, when they're feeling bad some morning, just to say, well, I'm going to use my sick leave, and then every time they accrue a day, they take a day kind of situation. So that's what we're trying, you know, it's a balance. It really is. And of course, all the terms of the contract are in balance. You know, it's the total package. These were things that they wanted restored. I mean, we started out that everything that was taken away back in October 2011 should be fully restored, but we chose, you know, which battles to fight and which ones that we thought were.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's all.
Any other questions for Mr. Kilgore? Anybody want to make a motion? Let me make a motion.
Move to approve resolution number R-16-25.
Second. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this resolution? Seeing none, any further council discussion on this item? Roll call, Ms. Williams. Who can't hear?
Thank you. My apologies, Mr. Mayor. I couldn't hear you back there.
Oh, okay. Could you just state your name for the record, sir?
Yes. Al Betcher. I am the representative, staff representative for Coastal Florida Public Employees Association and the Coastal Florida Police Benevolent Association. Of course, I was involved in the negotiations as the chief negotiator. My signature is on the contract. I wanted to address Mr. Gilmore and his question about the sick leave issue. While in the private sector that's not normally an issue, in the municipal and county issues, county employees, municipal employees, that tends to be a retention issue. And it also affects the workplace on a regular basis. We try to encourage employees not to use sick leave unless they're actually sick. When we don't do that, when we don't have a method of encouragement, they view sick leave as another day off, or use it or lose it. So this is a benefit to the city, and it prevents problems on my end in dealing with disciplinary issues that result from sick leave abuse, which is another problem that comes around from just that. If you don't have some benefit for the employee at the end of the road, at the beginning of the road, they just look at it as another time off. They tend to utilize sick leave then for a common cold, a little bit of the sniffles in the morning. Maybe I just didn't eat the right food last night, I have indigestion, I'll take the day off. This is a preventative issue, and the city kind of agrees with us in that part because of experience. We're familiar with that. I want to say also that for the first time in a long time, the city here has enjoined with us. We partnered looking out for the benefits of the employees to increase the viewpoint from the civilian population looking for employment that Sebastian is the real place to go, that they care about their employees. So we spent the time and went over line for line, item for item in the contract. If you gentlemen want to see what the tapes look like, the CDs, it's a stack about that high. We spent an awful lot of time doing that, arguing back and forth, but at the end of the day, we partnered to make this the most viable issue that we could for the city and for the employees, and I think we accomplished that. To me, the sick leave issue was just one that won things over with the employees. They were really concerned about that, not being able to buy anything back, you know, if they decided to leave. The real issue here is with that, I don't think you're going to see them wanting to leave. I think that this contract came out to be one of the best that we have, and it's because of that partnership. So I want to thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. And I guess I've seen the sick leave abuse, and it typically happens on a Monday or a Friday
Correct.
to try and elongate the weekend. So, you know, it does help with that retention. Thank you, sir. Anyone else from the public want to speak on this resolution? Seeing none, roll call, Ms. Williams.
Vice Mayor Adams.
Yes.
Ms. Coy.
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore.
No.
Mayor McPartlin.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Brings us up to resolution number R-16-26, ratifying the Coastal Florida Police Benevolent Association bargaining agreement. Mr. Ginsburg.
Yes, sir. 4B on your agenda is a resolution of the City of Sebastian, Indian River County, Florida, duly ratifying an agreement for all full-time permanent police officers and police sergeants between the bargaining unit of the Coastal Florida Police Benevolent Association, CFPBA, and the City of Sebastian for the period October 1, 2016 through September 30, 2019, approving a mutual consent agreement to deviate from the Florida Statute 185.35 sub 1 as provided in 185.35(1)G to use all available premium tax revenues toward the future cost of certain benefit improvements, authorizing the city manager to notify all parties of the city's ratification and cause said agreement to be put into effect, providing for repeal of resolutions or parts of resolutions in conflict herewith, providing for severability, providing for an effective date.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ginsburg. Again, Mr. Kilgore.
Okay, with this agreement, it pretty much dovetails most of the overall terms of the PEA in terms of being a 3-year agreement, 3% pay increase October 1st, reopeners for the next 2 years. The step plan would also apply to those members. We went through line by line, just as we did on the other one. We feel like we changing to the lower insurance premiums will help on the recruitment. The biggest distinction between the two contracts is the police pension fund is partially funded through state premium tax monies. We get a check every year. Last year, that check was $145,700. The state required, when they allocated those monies to the municipalities, that they be used over a frozen amount for only for police enhancements to their pension plan. We have not done anything with that overage because obviously you've got to come up with a program that is something that we feel like can be paid for totally by those state monies. One of the biggest concerns at the table that the PBA representatives had was there again back in October of 2011. We made changes to their pension plan that took away where they had a 3% factor for each year of service to the city that they would base their pension on. We reduced it for the new employees after October 2011 to a 2% factor. We cut it by 1/3. There again, recruitment-wise, we talk to police officers as they come in to interview for our positions, and that's one of the driving factors, I believe, in most police officers. They're looking for that comparability with other pension plans. And based on what I've been told, it's the wrong way to say that, but generally I think other pension plans from other agencies, particularly in our area, have a 3% factor. So we did agree to change the factor for those new employees since October 2011 to a 3% versus a 2%, but it would be for years after this October 1st, 2016. So our intent is to present that or go through the process. Any change to the pension plan has to be approved by the pension board. It has to be studied actuarially to see, to establish what the cost is. And we want, as management, we've basically agreed to move it through the process, see what the results are, see what the numbers, how they match up to the state monies, be able to restore that 3% factor, as well as look at the possibility, if there's funds available, there again from the state monies, that we would look at a COLA, some kind of adjustment to the retirees' check that they might be drawing, for years without any kind of adjustment. We also would look at the possibility of buying back time, either because of military service or because of employment with another agency. And the fourth item was a drop program, which is a deferred retirement option, where you've probably heard about it, you've read about it in the newspaper. Many plans have gotten into trouble because they overcommitted what they could afford to do by instituting a drop program, but it's all in the way it's defined. So what we intend to do is define a program that gives a drop program without giving away the farm, obviously, or to make it too excessive or make it such a great perceived benefit that the public's going to look at it and think, well, kind of off our rockers. But it's all in the way it's defined. We intend, actually we have a pension board meeting tomorrow, and I intend to bring that up to the pension board, or bring this discussion up with them and start the process. The vote on the contract was 16 yes and 0 no. We, once again, as Al Bocher said, we sat at the table and we tried to make an agreement that worked for both sides, and bottom line is we want an employee workforce that's adequately compensated and has clear rules and good morale because of that. One thing I failed to mention in both contracts is that we did, for those employees that do have a grievance, we did shorten the time frame in which we would respond to a grievance. So hopefully we can address any problems, get them resolved in a shorter time than we've had been committed to in the past. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kilgore. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Kilgore?
No.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Gilmore.
I just fail to see how we backpedaled on this, went back to the 3%. We had changed that. We had those folks that were hired at up to a certain point were still on 3%, and then anybody hired after, was it 2010? I'm not sure.
Actually, October 2011.
11 would be at 2%. Was that not correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, I mean, what that means is that if you've got 25 years of service in and you're at 2%, you're going to get 50% of your pay, correct?
As opposed to 75.
And if we go back to 3%, now they're going to get 75% of their pay.
Right.
So somebody retiring after 25 years is going to get $75,000 a year roughly till they die.
The basic benefit is based for your lifetime. There's different ways you can pull it out or share it with a spouse and that type of thing. But
Well, I just feel like it seems like I have no doubts that it was 16-0. I mean, I think we gave away the farm. And I would have really been appreciated that if we would have had some more input to the city council as that we were going to negotiate this way. I can't support this contract the way it is.
Well, please understand that we don't expect to be paying city funds for this. We expect the state funds that have to be applied to increasing benefits to cover our costs. So.
Okay.
Right, anyone else, any questions, Mr. Kilgore?
Yeah, I'd like, can I make a comment? Wait, I don't have a question. I'll wait, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Entertain a motion on this resolution?
Move to approve Resolution Number R-16-26.
Second. Anyone from the public wish to speak on Resolution R-16-26? Yes, sir.
Al Becker, Coastal Florida Police Benevolent Association, 810 Fentress Court, Daytona Beach, Florida, 32117. On the issue of the increase in the pension, the police officers here look at the surrounding jurisdictions. All of them are at that 3% level. The job that they do is a very difficult job. I think that the job that the chief of police and the deputy chief and the commander have here is difficult when they're looking at a completely different pension system. This is why we address this. The 185 money that Mr. Kilgore, yes, was talking about was a decision that was made by the officers here to improve their situation in competitiveness with other agencies here in the area. And to make that clear, they had three choices. They could either take all of that money and split it amongst themselves. They could make no decision, in which case the money would have been split 50-50 with the city and those pensioners. Or they could, if some benefit came their way and it worked for everybody's benefit, turn all that money over to the city, which is the decision that they made in order to get that part of the agreement. I think that's going to help the chief in obtaining the best possible employees that she can get, particularly when the employees come from another agency with experience. They're not going to want to do that, and we know that that's a fact. More importantly, we had officers here that I spoke to personally that felt that if they couldn't improve that pension, they were here a short enough period of time that they could leave and go somewhere else and increase their situation. And again, it's a difficult comparison if you want to look at the private sector and what goes on in law enforcement. I've been in law enforcement for 47 years. I refuse to quit. I support them because I know all the facets of it, everything that goes on in it. And I know what the men feel. They trust me. They talk to me about these issues. So I know that the chief would have had some issues had we not been able to resolve this in that way. The choice to me was one of two. Either we can improve this for those guys that came on after October in 2011, or we're going to leave and you'll be short some more people. So I think it was a good choice. I think that the city made a good choice. I believe that we are still working in that same area of partnership. Drop doesn't cost you anything. Buybacks don't cost you anything. As a matter of fact, I don't really see that as a real issue because my experience is unless somebody's young and new, they can't afford to do it. If they have prior experience, they've been around for a while, or they have 5 or 6 years in this agency, the cost factor to them to buy those years to increase their pension is not within their realm. Even if they mortgage their house with a second mortgage, they're not going to be able to accomplish that. And that's from personal experience with all the agencies I deal with, and I'm part of a representation of 42 agencies. So I know for a fact how that works. I think that the city did a really good job of trying to work through the problems that we're having with the employees and resolve them. That's why you had a 16-0 vote on the contract from the police officers here. They felt that you gave them the best deal that they could possibly get and made things better from the time period that they didn't have things so good. When the crunch was on and they had to give up and they had furloughs and everything else, they hung tight, they worked hard for the city. You have great guys here, terrific guys. This is a terrific city. This is a diamond community. You have a lot of people coming in and out of here all the time to see your riverfront parks and all the events that you have here. You have great people that love the people in this town. And I think that the citizens here really appreciate, overall, they appreciate the police officers and the police department they have, along with the city itself, the way the city is run. And I got to thank Joe Griffin for being the type of manager that he is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I'd like to echo, I think we do have the best and the brightest police department on the Treasure Coast, and we need to remain competitive with the other police departments out there, because when you have a problem in obtaining quality people, what happens is sometimes you lower your standards a little bit, and when you lower your standards, you get maybe the people who shouldn't be wearing a uniform working for you, and that's what creates a lot of the problems that are out there. And I think, like I said, is we have a very good police department, you know, and there are other areas on the Treasure Coast that are lacking, you know, and not as supportive as the police department and everything that they do. And again, I think it's important that we are able to retain our best, and we need to be competitive so our good people don't leave to go somewhere else. Yes, Ms. Coy.
And just to tag along to that, I want to comment on the difference between 2011 and now. Times change, and in 2011, times were very, very, very different. Our economy was still down the tubes. Our housing market on house values were still declining. So our general fund was declining. It was a very hard year, and I remember that bargaining that we had to do. It was hard, and we had to make some very tough decisions. And fortunately, our police officers and the union realized how tough it was at the time for us, and they agreed to some things. Well, I don't know anyone who is not watching the news in this day and age, and anyone who is watching the news and seeing that our police officers are targets just by riding around in their car, just by standing on the street corner and directing traffic, just by showing up to a 911 call. They have targets on their back, and we have to attract the best and the brightest. We negotiated in good faith with them, and we owe them. We took away. It's time now. Times change. We have to give back. I commend everyone who worked on both of these contracts. So I'm prepared to support this one.
All right. I guess if somebody can grab that, turn off. Anyone else from the public wish to speak on resolution number R-16-26? Any further council discussion on this item? Ms. Williams, roll call, please.
Ms. Coy?
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore?
Yes.
Mayor McPartlin?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Adams?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right. Brings us up to item 5, public hearing adoption of the tentative millage and fiscal year 2016-2017 budget. Mr. Ginsburg.
Yes, sir. This is the first of 2 millage and budget hearings that you'll be conducting in September. The next one is going to be part of your agenda for your regular meeting on September 28th. Tonight, you're dealing with a tentative millage and a tentative budget. It'll be on September 28th, you'll be dealing with a final millage and a final budget. State law says that your millage, when you consider a final millage, cannot be higher than the millage that you adopt tonight, unless you go through some procedures involving individual mailings to everyone, and then there's a separate meeting with separate time frames and so forth. It's difficult to have a millage higher, a final millage higher than your tentative millage. In any event, tonight you'll be considering 2 resolutions that will establish those. State law requires that you conduct public hearing on these, and that the millage, at the conclusion of all of the public hearing, the millage resolution be adopted prior to the budget resolution. I will read the 2 titles for you so that any member of the public can speak with regard to the budget or millage without having to worry about which particular agenda item he or she is addressing. 5E on your agenda is your tentative millage resolution, and it reads, a resolution of the City of Sebastian, Indian River County, Florida, adopting a tentative millage of 3.8556 mills for the calendar year 2015, providing conflicts, providing an effective date. And 5F is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Sebastian, Indian River County, Florida, adopting the tentative budget for fiscal year beginning October 1, 2016, ending September 30, 2017, making appropriations for the payment of operating expenses, capital expenses, and for the principal and interest payments on indebtedness of the city in the city's general fund, special revenue funds, debt service fund, capital improvement funds, golf course fund, airport fund, and building department fund, as provided for in Schedule A, attached hereto. Establishing authority of the city manager to implement the budget, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date. And state law also provides that the first substantive item discussed tonight shall be the percentage increase in millage over the rollback rate necessary to fund the budget, if any, and the specific purposes for which ad valorem tax revenues are being increased. The city manager will address that particular requirement of state law.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ginsburg. Mr. Griffin?
The proposed millage of 3.8556 mils is 5.06% higher than the rollback rate of 3.67 mils. Some of the reasons for this increase include a 3% COLA for employees, a reduction in health insurance premiums for employees, and continued road paving.
All right, thank you, Mr. Griffin. I guess budget overview is Mr. Kilgore?
Before Mr. Kilgore speaks, I want to make sure, I believe I said when I read the title for the millage resolution, I mentioned the calendar year 2015, which I think is what was in the title sheet, but the actual resolution, R1623, the title is correct and says calendar year 2016. So I want to make sure that that is correct for the record.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Kilgore?
Thank you. First, just speaking as far as the property values and millage rate, this year we went over the $1 billion mark, which is $72,942,000 more than last year, an increase of 7.54%. So it's good to see that growth again. The new taxable value portion of that is $25,763,000 compared to $25,492,000 last year. So we had about the same amount of new growth or additions to the tax roll as we did last year. The average reassessment was 4.88%. Bottom line is that going with the 3.67, which was the calculated rollback rate, a $100,000 homesteaded property would pay about $6.60 less than last year. And that's because of the limitation that the property appraiser has on increases in the assessed value to not exceed the CPI or 3%, whichever's less. So the CPI was 0.7295. So that restricts the amount of additional value that will be taxed to the homesteaded properties. Commercials take the full bore. They would go on an average then of the 4.88% increase in their taxable values. Even with that said, at the rollback rate, a commercial property would only be about 65 cents a year less than last year at the rollback rate. At keeping the same 3.8556 millage, a $100,000 homesteaded property would pay only $2.81 more per year, and a commercial would pay just $18.82 more. I wanted to expand on that as far as a $200,000 property. You would be talking about, with the rollback rate, a savings of $22 a year for residential and a savings of about $1.30 a year for a commercial for the $200,000 property. We're not talking huge dollar amount of increases. We are recommending the 3.8556. Wanted to give you just a brief overview of expenditures. The total amount budgeted to be spent now in the current in the proposed budget is $33,831 more than last year's budget. On the revenue side, we're taking $416,431 more in revenues. A good part of that is from ad valorem taxes, but we also had increases in franchise, utility taxes, and state revenues. The difference between the $33,000 and the $416 amounts to the $371,000 that we are following council's direction on last year when we approved the voluntary early retirement program and repaying that to our fund balance. So on this slide, I've given you a quick snapshot of the $5 million we currently have in reserve and showing that the $371,000 would increase that balance to about $5.4 million. We think that's a prudent thing to do. We think keeping the same millage rate for this year makes good sense because of the uncertainties that we have. We always have the major storm event threat out there. Some would say that we just aren't in an area to have a storm, and would really be a freak thing. But if it is a freak thing and it happens, then I'm going to be happy we've got money set aside. The other big uncertainty is the discretionary sales tax referendum that we hope will be adopted. If not, then we have another situation there where a good deal of our police cars, replacement, and a lot of our stormwater programs, things that we want to accomplish are funded through the discretionary sales tax. So a loss of that would have a tremendous impact on general fund. The national election is another factor, depending on your politics, what you might believe could result after that time. So we don't think it's the right thing this year to be reducing the millage to the rollback rate. I've outlined, I've got more detailed information on each of the enterprise funds. I think for the sake of time, unless you have particular questions about a particular one, I'm just going to kind of flip through these quickly. I'll cover the enterprise funds and all the special revenue funds. Of course, that includes the golf course, the airports, the building fund, and I've started listing all the special revenue funds, including the local option gas tax, our parking in lieu of fund, the discretionary sales tax, the riverfront CRA fund, stormwater utility, recreation impact fee, law enforcement forfeiture fund, and cemetery trust fund. As far as our debt service funds, we have still paying on the bonds for the City Hall and Police Station. We've got a final maturity date of April 1st, 2017, which fortunately expires before the expiration date of that revenue source. So the stormwater utility debt service fund is another thing because its maturity extends to 2022, and should we lose our discretionary sales tax fund that is now covering this cost, we would have to provide for those annual debt service payments, which are about $400,000. We are still paying, we continue to pay for a paving note that was issued that has a final maturity date of 2022. So that's using about $400,000 for about $900,000 a year we get in local option gas tax funds. So until that's paid off, we're going to continue to be allocating some of those funds. So I'm open to any questions in particular about the different funds or the millage rate.
All right, Council, any questions for Mr. Goldberg? No?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Kilgore, could you take a look at this? This is from an agenda transmittal December 16th of last year, and it was the presentation was how much money we're going to save because of the deferred folks that were going to be leaving, And the bottom line is $401,386 that we were supposedly going to save. Do you understand why I'm having trouble with us increasing the budget 5%?
When that program was initially presented, I think that's when that schedule was presented to the council. That was projecting savings if certain things happen on each position. And we were looking at a position and said, okay, if they leave us, we won't fill the position, or we will fill it with a lower category position. There was a lot of assumptions made. Most of that came to fruition. We tried to hold the line. If we said we weren't going to fill a position, we pretty much did that. The other thing that happened, we had a couple of add-ons after that initial presentation. So for the most part, that number wouldn't change because of those items. But also, when you're looking at the $401,000 savings on that sheet versus the 371, the 371 is the amount we actually laid out after all was said and done, how much we paid out to those retirees. So that gets us whole. It doesn't recognize the full savings over time that we'll have for those positions and for switching out those positions.
So we really don't have $401,000 savings this coming year.
Well,
The savings will really come next year. We had made the statement when this was going on that we were borrowing from reserves for the voluntary early retirement program, and that the savings would not be in the fiscal year that we're talking about right now, 16-17, but it would be in 17-18. That's when we would really realize those savings, because 16 and 17 we wanted to pay back to the reserves what we had used in the voluntary early retirement program. Also, I think is the main add-on to the point that Mr. Gilmore was making would be the city clerk there, which was significant.
true.
And that would reduce that number.
The other factor is, after paying the 371, whatever that incremental amount of money saved is, as Joe says, you won't recognize the full impact until after we get past this year. But that additional amount was also saved in order that we could spend some of it on some new positions this year, the increases. So, our increased cost of doing business was partially offset already in these numbers. So it is very difficult to pin it down.
Well, according to this, the net cost was going to be, first year was going to be $237,085. That's basically what we were looking at in December, and that was...
But then we came back with the city clerk.
We approved that here at council.
Well, the city clerk didn't make $143,000, though.
Well, we came back with two other ones, too. I think Mr. Converse.
And that was approved here at council. We approved that.
They were, but it was
That-
subsequent to the schedule he's looking at.
That- We approved that.
That's all.
Any other questions for Mr. Kilgore?
Now, my presentation, if you would indulge us, the chair of the Budget Committee, Ed Hurley, he has a short PowerPoint as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, council members.
Good evening.
Ed Hurley, Chairman of the Budget Committee. I'll make this brief. Here's what we considered because there was a discussion, if you remember, in July, at various points below the 3.8556. And we did consider those other two lower millage rates, which had revenue reductions of 147, 148,000, or 176,000. In the budget, we reviewed the original budget, the proposed changes. We considered the revenue reductions. We considered the revenue increases, and we discussed the reasons and the benefits for keeping the 3.8556 rate, which I'll discuss now. Why? City growth. This city's growing. I said this not too long ago. I haven't gotten an updated figure, but third quarter, 42 home building permits. Drive around Sebastian. It's starting to grow like crazy. I said to my wife the other day, it looks like 2005, 2006. There's a house here, and there was a house down on Fleming. It was built in less than 90 days and sold. Interesting. The demand for city services is going to increase, and an emphasis. We've got to go forward. We don't need to go backwards. Increased lagoon funding. The famous baffle boxes, add some more. Increased emphasis on sewer connections. Very, very important. In fact, Mr. Gilmore brought it up the last time when I mentioned this. With these added monies, there's a possibility that we can give more support to the local people who are still on sewers east of the railroad, and I think the number's somewhere around 60 to 70.
62.
62. I knew I'd get prompted. And maybe we can raise that. Suggestion, maybe we double it. Get the people off the septic systems and onto the sewer. Potential loss of DST funding. This could potentially be a horror. And I'm a little bit surprised that here we are the third week in September, and we haven't heard much of anything about this DST vote. Just hasn't been discussed, along with all the other things that are going on. It's probably dropped by the wayside, but hopefully it'll get passed, because we could be out as much as $3 million. So we need to prepare for this. Potential economic downturn, you can argue that all day long. So we revisited this on our August 8th meeting, and subsequently I've changed this PowerPoint a little bit, and we sent it out to all the members of the committee, so they all knew about it, and nobody changed their mind. So it's unanimous. The committee supports 3.8556. Any questions or comments?
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Hurley? No?
Thank you
I
very
just
much.
wanna thank you for your time and dedication, not only of you, Mr. Hurley, but the rest of the Citizens Budget Review team. I know you guys put a lot of time and effort in, and a lot of suggestions for Mr. Kilgore. Thank you.
Yes, and we thank Ken and his department. Thank you.
That's it. All right. This time I'll open it up to the public, whoever wants to speak on the tentative millage and tentative budget. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Damian Gilliams, 1623 US 1, Sebastian. When you talk about the millage rate, and we talk about assessed values, everybody, the council gives the impression that we're not raising your taxes when we're not raising your millage rate. But when the tax appraiser increases your assessment, and you continue to stay at the millage rate that you're at, in essence, you're raising our taxes. That's what you're doing. You're not rolling them back, and that's what you need to be doing. I know I don't have a lot of time. There's a few points I want to make, Mr. Mayor. Is there going to be speaking under the budget part of this, or are you going to do this in one fell swoop? You're going to do a resolution for both of them at the same time?
Open the public input for both right now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome.
So there are a lot of things that need to be addressed that's wrong with this community, and I know you'd like to have extra money, but I hate the fact that when you get somebody up here and says, well, we may have another storm, that's what the insurance you're paying for, that's what that covers. When you have a storm and you have damages, you pay for it. Don't give the illusion we need to keep putting more money into the reserve, because you're in excess, according to Florida accounting standards, your reserve is in excess of your standard operating budget. And you know that. And you just keep taking and taking and taking. A lot of people don't understand accounting. And sometimes I have to take a second look at it. I'm just going to try to talk to you in general terms this evening. Our stormwater canals over there, you did one side of the Highlands, but you didn't do the other. You're bringing in over $1.1 million in revenue in stormwater fees, but you're not addressing the major issues. You put it off. And you don't think that liability and litigation is not coming down the pipeline, you're wrong. You can't fix stormwater canal walls for a council member on one side of the 512 and not do it for the people on the other side, because that's what you're doing, okay? And there's liability because people are getting hurt. So you're not dealing with that in your budget. The discretionary sales tax, you're taking money from there and you're sending it to the golf course to fix your irrigation. You're not increasing your budget for your irrigation, for your golf course, for reserves, for repairs. And then you're also taking money from the building department and you're loaning it over to the golf course. Now, the building department is taking money from occupational licenses. And I brought this up to you before. If the building department is doing so well with their permit fees, why don't they give that money back to the businesses in this community so maybe we can hook up to water, to sewer lines? And I spoke to Mr. Griffin about this. He knows what I'm referring to. You can't move money around. Before, when hard times are hard, you said, let's get the building department back on its feet and we'll send the money over. That building department, now we're subsidizing the developers. That money needs to come back to the businesses. There's a lot of shell moving around here, and I don't have enough time to go through it. But eventually I'm going to get a seat up there, and I'm going to open it. We're going to have transparency. We're going to get the checkbook on the internet, Mr. Mayor. We need to have transparency so everybody in this community knows how their money's being spent. As far as the quarter round, you stop that. Nothing, our roads are crumbling, but yet you keep raising our taxes. Listen, you have plenty of money. If you go through, and I went through your CAFRA, public utility taxes increased, franchise fees increased, revenues, all other revenue sources increased, transfers from other funds were increased, transfers from out of other funds were increased. And it just goes on. You're only looking at property taxes. There are so many increases in your revenue sources you're not talking about. Enough is enough. Mr. Gilmore was correct about tonight. You promised us. We had all this money we were going to save when we did these buyouts. You did it twice. And you know what? You tell us one thing to get something else, and then when it comes down to taking that money and reinvesting it back in the community, you hire, and you keep hiring, and you keep hiring. Enough with the smoke and mirrors. Where's Mr. Councilman Jim Hill tonight? He missed 5 absences. This is not the kind of leadership we want. We want people who are going to represent us, read the budget, find the problems, and fix it. And thank God, Mr. Larry Napier, we have to bring him in from Fellsmere, who's a finance guy, is going to run for city council. That's what we need in this
Point
community.
of order. This
Thank
is
you,
not a
Mr.
place
Mayor.
for a campaign.
Thank you very much, Mrs.
All
Coy.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else from the public wish to speak about the millage rate and the tentative budget? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Linda Kinchin, 190 Delmar Street, Sebastian. I just have some questions with regard to several of the budgets. First of all, the cell phone usage is going up $7,800 in the newest budget, and I just wondered, is that because of the smartphones? I guess not. Also, the mowing in the CRA area has been moved to the parks budget, but we also are showing $30,000 for contract mowing in the non-departmental budget, and I'd like to know what that is for. We have no money budgeted for quarter-round cleaning and maintenance, and you have $5.4 million worth of quarter-round out there that you're just going to ignore. I know you're not doing it anymore, but you got to take care of what's already there. It works. As far as administrative services, they've raised their promotional costs from $750 to $2,200. And one of the biggest increases, and I'm not picking on anybody, Michelle, but in the police department operations budget, they have gone up $35,000 in one line item, and I wondered why. That's a big jump. There's no explanation other than gas usage and training. If that's the case, it should be under gas usage and training and not under departmental supplies. That's pretty much all I have. I would hope that you would budget some money for the quarter-round maintenance that's already in the ground. And one other thing, at the Planning and Zoning Board meeting where they approved the police evidence, the city engineer said that that ADA playground is not going to be replaced. I think that you should, in the recreational impact fee budget, which has plenty of money to do so, buy a new playground and put it somewhere else, because that's the only ADA playground that we have in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Mr. Griffin, you have any comments on any, you got any comments?
No, sir.
Okay. My understanding with the quarter round is we stopped because we had to put more money into the ditches and the swales to make sure that they were working properly. And then also the quarter round that's already installed, that's kind of the residents' responsibility to maintain that and make sure it's not busted up. Is that correct? I think that's what we discussed numerous times up here.
That's been the problem, is that it is up to the residents to, by ordinance, to keep that operational, and frankly, that doesn't happen, and we were expending an inordinate amount of money. Ms. Kitchen is correct. Where it is installed properly and where it's maintained, it works. But that's probably 30% of the areas from what we've seen. And we've seen a lot of abuse out there. People just drive across it and mess up the flow on both sides. So that's part of the issue that I brought to you when council approved that we stop that program.
All right.
We even had to change the program the one year, because that's something I was following pretty close. We changed the program one year and backed it up by, I think, a year, because we had to go back and do repairs on stuff that we had just put in. And so we were backing up the completion because we had to go back and put the repairs. And that's when it was starting to become evident that, yes, it works well where it's maintained well, where the grading was done properly initially. But there's so many other problems, and where people do drive over, we cannot, I look at Easy Street Park, and we have people driving over on Lake Street, the quarter round that's put in there, because people will pull up, feed the ducks, drive over the quarter round, and it's coming out. And that's not was not in the plan. It was something we did not plan for. So now we know. It was a nice try, but this council elected to dump it. We did not choose to continue the quarter round.
Right. I guess if you look at the cell phones, we might be able to find a cheaper plan, but sometimes you go to a cheaper plan, then where they get you is they backdoor you on the data you use for a thing. So, I know you keep your eye out there for any kind of opportunities.
I really don't know what, just off the top of my head, what that line item increase is, but
Right.
I'll look into it. And I think Ms. Kitchen said it was $700 to $800 or something like that.
Right. And then I was also thinking the administrative services that probably went out, we outsourced some services to other individuals, which is saving us somewhere else, right, in personnel.
And I do know about the mowing issue. That's our nuisance mowing, that $30,000. So frankly, that's more than justified.
All right, thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak on the tentative millage rate increase and the tentative budget? Any further council discussion on these items?
Yes, just a couple.
I'd like to make a comment.
Okay, Mr. Gilmore?
I have a problem rubber stamping this millage, 3.8556. I just, I'd feel much more comfortable at a lower rate. There's going to be one more hearing, is that not correct? This is not the final millage.
That's correct.
Right. Final hearing will be
So we can
September
go down, we just can't go up.
Correct.
I would like to make a motion that we take it down a little bit to 3.80. I would feel more comfortable. That's only about, I think, Mr. Kilgore said $39,000 less than.
Actually, it's 52,000.
52,000 less than the budget. I'm
What
sure
do
we
you
can.
plan on cutting? What do you propose we cut?
Well, that's not my job. You know, that's somebody else's job.
Oh,
You know, it's not our job to micromanage, you know, or direct staff. So I'm sure they can find 52,000 in a $25 million budget, Mrs.
it is our
Coy.
job to direct from up here. It's not our job to direct from the office to office.
We
Where
would
do you
just say
propose?
find
I'm
50
willing to
We would just say
entertain.
find $52,000 somewhere in that budget and get rid of it. I'm sure that we can do that.
I like to have, when you're asking for a change, bring a solution. Just to say, make it happen is not a solution. So I could back you, perhaps, if you had a solution. But you just say, let's just
It's a
cut it.
$25 million budget. It's a $25 million budget.
So let's take it out of the police budget? Where do you want to take it out? You want to take it out of paving? You want to take it out of lagoon? How
You could
about
take it
Parks
out
and
of
Rec?
$5,000 out of every item. You know, you take 10 projects and take $5,000 out of them, and you got $50,000. It's pretty simple when you have a $25 million budget. It really is.
Then you should have a simple solution.
Well, we got a motion for a 3.80 millage rate.
Can I make some comments? I was just,
Well, if there's no
Let's see if
second,
we
there's
get
no,
a
there's
second
no.
first. Let's see if we get a second on the 3.80.
oh, yes, second.
On the 3.80?
Yeah, no, oh, no. I'm sorry. I didn't hear, he didn't make a motion. No,
He did make a motion.
okay. No,
All right, there's no second on the 3.80. Ms. Coy, you have a comment?
yes. Back to some comments about not having to have money. And I'm really surprised that these comments are being made because the individual making them was here in 2004 when we had Francis and Jean. And right after that, we had to clean up. We had to take millions of dollars out of the general fund. We had to borrow before payment came from the insurance company, before FEMA sent help, millions of dollars. And I'm surprised because individuals during that time applied for loans through Department of Environmental Protection, and it took a long time for that to get settled. It doesn't come immediately. So to assume that we don't need a fund, a backup for emergencies, and oh, by the way, we have new emergencies that are just sitting out there, potentially waiting to happen. Emergencies that are occurring in Orlando and Baltimore and all over this country. We need to think hard. So to say that's just money sitting there up for grabs is not an option, ever. And we are growing. So unless you want this town to go backwards, since we are in growth mode, we do need to bump it up a little. And oh, by the way, I personally do not mind paying $2.81 extra this year, especially when it's going to the police department and other projects that we need. Most folks are homesteaded. If they're not homesteaded, they're brand new to our city. Those that are homesteaded, we're capped at 3% increase. We're capped. $2.81 per 100,000 for a residence. Come on, folks. $2.81. Move to approve the millage rate of 3.8556.
I'll second that. It's, like you say, it's, you know, when I look at my tax bill, and I look at everybody who's getting money, and mine is less than $3 a year with the 3.8556 rate would be. It's less than a gallon of milk. I mean, milk has increased more than the taxes that we're talking about in the city of Sebastian. While again, the city is growing, and we kicked the can down the road on a lot of projects over the years, especially our roads, especially, you know, the ditches and the swales, and we thought, oh, well, tomorrow will come. Well, you know what, we're looking at being responsible with this money going forward. I mean, my property taxes are still way less than they were in 2004, probably almost half of what I used to pay. So, I mean, the city cut back really a lot over the years, and now it's looking, again, it's less than, for me personally, less than $3 a year is what I'm looking at. So, and I think we do a tremendous job with the services in the city, and I think that money will be well spent. So, any other comment on the council? I got a motion and a second. Ms. Williams, roll call.
Mayor McPartlin?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Adams?
Yes.
Ms. Coy?
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore?
No.
Well, that's the
Mr.
resolution.
Motion carries.
All right, that moves forward. And then we have the adopt a resolution R-16-24, the tentative budget. I'll make a motion to approve that.
Second.
Any further comment from the council on the tentative budget? Seeing none, roll call, Ms. Williams.
Mayor McPartlin?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Adams?
Yes.
Ms. Coy?
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore?
No.
Motion carries.
It carries. And then an announcement that the final public hearing on the millage and the budget is to be held on Wednesday, September 28th. The city council here during our regular meeting beginning at 6 p.m.
Yes, and tonight's action means that the 3.8556 millage, the tentative millage you adopted tonight, is 5.06% higher than the rollback rate.
All right. Being that there's any other business here, Mr. Griffin, or we're good? Any other comments?
Can I announce Thursday?
Sure.
One more time, this Thursday at 4 o'clock, we have Colonel Gary West is riding his bicycle from Maine to Key West. He will be staying overnight in Sebastian, which is very unusual. Normally, these bike rides, people just pass right through and they don't even, they kind of wave and go somewhere else. Colonel West is staying overnight. We are having a ceremony at 4 o'clock in the park. It's a very good cause. Folds of Honor gives scholarships to children of deceased and disabled military veterans, a very reputable 501c3. And I want to thank already the generous constituency out there. Our city is so good. And thanks to the Chamber of Commerce for advertising this event. We will be giving the Colonel a nice donation for his efforts to do this. So hope to see you at 4 o'clock at the flag, or 4:15 at the flagpole. He will depart the bridge at 4. So wave to him on US 1. Thank you, sir, very much.
All right, you're welcome. Any other comments? No? Being no other business, we're in adjournment. Good night.